My name is Dave Stieber. I'm a CPS teacher. I teach at Kenwood currently. I've taught at CVS and Team Inglewood before that. So for me, it's, I say ironic, to say the least, that all of a sudden now people are concerned about students' mental health. I've been teaching since '07. There's never been enough student mental health care, need, anything for our students. I worked at Team Inglewood that was defunded to the point of being closed. While I was there, we had a counselor cut, librarian cut, technology coordinator cut, but we always had police officers. There was always an officer at the school, right? While that whole school was defunded to the point of being closed. The first couple of weeks of me teaching, my first time in CPS, one of the students pulled me aside and said, "Mr. Sieber, my house got broken into last night." I'm like, "Whoa, I'm really sorry. You know, what'd the police say?" He's like, "They haven't come yet." And I was like, "What? When was this?" And he's like, "Yesterday." And so I was like, whoa, like as a white educator and a white person, these were not the experiences that I grew up with, right? The privileges that I didn't have to deal with. And so this process of learning about like why police shouldn't be in schools and how, for me, having white skin is a whole lot different than my students who have been teaching, you know, since '07. You know, at Team Inglewood, and a lot of educators, you know, unfortunately can speak to this, but like when you teach in CPS long enough, depending on where you teach, you're going to lose students, right? And those students are, you lose them because of violence, intercommunal violence, police violence, you know, disinvestment in communities. And when a student dies, CPS has a crisis counselor team of 4 that comes to your school. And these people are great. They're really good, but there's 4 of them, right? And they will spend a couple hours there and then they got to go on to the next. Right. And so the whole idea of like, we don't even know what crisis counselors can really do or like what their roles are because we get them for 2 hours when there's a tragedy that we're all dealing with. Right. So like, you know, you want to talk about mental health, it's recommended that there's be one psychologist for every 700 students. That's a nationwide recommendation. In CPS, it's one psychologist for every 1,700 students. Okay. The UFC lab school, they got a counselor for every 105 students. CPS, we got a counselor for every 400, right? So as Ari is saying, like it's tough to imagine what our students should have because they've been deprived for so long, like generationally, right? I mean, we're talking Chicago Willis wagons, right? We're talking student-based budgeting, we're talking school closures. But when teachers ask for those things to demand that our students get mental health, we're called greedy, right? We went on strike, we're called greedy because we want our students to have homeless coordinators and mental health services. The students on this today, right, like are the inspiration for all teachers. And like it took a whole lot of students this whole summer to put a dent in the Chicago Police Department budget, right? Students defunded CPD, right? There was a $33 million budget that CPS was paying the Chicago Police Department to criminalize our students, and students defunded that by $18 million. That's huge, right? But there's still $15 million that we're paying to keep police in our schools. And so a couple things, right? We need to do something differently with that $15 million, obviously, but also where did that 18 million go, right? There's a copsoutofcps.com is a student-based website, and they have research about how much money you could spend, you know, to actually fund mental health and how you could reallocate that. So if you had $18 million, that's 475 more mental health staff for schools, right? We're in the 3rd largest district in the country, but CPS acts like the school to prison pipeline doesn't apply here, like it's not real, right? Like there's no data to back that up, which is absolutely false, right? There's data upon data and research upon research to show police in schools across the country and in Chicago is detrimental to Black students, brown students, students with special needs, every single student. Those are the kids that we claim to care about when it's convenient, but not right now, not during this. Our students have been failed, right? And that's ongoing. They're still being failed. Their lives haven't been valued. Educators have to deal with that. Parents have to deal with that. Students obviously have to deal with that. And all these things, right, are always happening, but they always go to school with police. The police are always funded, right, while the students are not. I've seen students zip tied and arrested in school, handcuffed in front of their friends, walked out of the building. These could be after a major fight, could be after a student coming in with a bad experience on the way to school, with trauma, and mouthing off, and the cop arrests them, right? Like these are things that happen in our schools. So like many people are saying, we need to think about it differently, right? And this is exactly like the part that we kind of got to get to. Our students should be greeted with mental health workers. The first week of school, it should be every single student meets with a mental health worker, right? There's a needs assessment done. Some students may need mental health services once a month, other kids every day, right? And there's money to pay for that because we care about mental health so much, right? Like we all of a sudden care about mental health, right? There's $18 million, there's the care for that, all those things exist. So if the goal is education, then we should educate our students how to deal with trauma, right? We shouldn't have a cop with a gun in the background threatening them to act right, because if they don't, they're going to get arrested. We should teach them how to deal with things that they've experienced and cope them and educate them and keep them safe, right? People always be like, well, that cop is so nice. Okay, you can bring in a nice, guest speaker. You can bring in like other people to help who are trained in de-escalation, restoration, services. There's a lot of things that you can do. And so, if we're looking for role models, that's another argument here. We can hire Black and brown educators, right? We've pushed out them for years. That's a whole step in itself. So I know it's a shift. It's a big shift. But like, if you truly, right, believe in students and love students and value students and listen to students and believe in data, right, then you want to model like what they should experience, right? You want to give them all the resources that they deserve. And those things are all about mental health. They're not about criminalization. Thank you.